know the stories you have submitted here are usually of a victim of a crime or creepy encounter. This time I am the creep. I'm hoping sending this in gives me some closure, so I can get on with my life. Here's my story. Change my name if you read this. I'm not looking for sympathy. I just want people to understand how fast small choices can turn into something dangerous. I'm 31. I work nights unloading delivery trucks, so my morning starts around 5 in the evening. This happened last October. I remember the date exactly because I kept the receipt for months. October 17th, 10:43 p.m. Red Line Gas. It was a clear autumn night. Bugs were smacking against the bright lights like rain. I pulled into the station to top up on fuel. A girl pulled into the next pump. She drove a silver hatchback with a little whale keychain swinging from the mirror. She looked like she was in her mid-20s, yellow hoodie, messy bun, faint paint stains on her knuckles like she'd been working on a project at home. Her card wouldn't read at the pump, so she tugged one earbud out and asked me a little sheepishly, "Can I borrow your squeegee?" I handed it over. She gave me a quick smile, wiped her windshield and handed it back. She then drove off, taking a right out of the lot. That should have been the end, just a moment in passing, but I turned right too, even though my destination was left. At first I told myself it was coincidence, that I was just heading the same way, but I passed one ramp for the highway, then another. When she finally turned into Oakhurst Apartments, I kept going straight. My heart was racing, but I told myself I hadn't really done anything wrong. 2 days later, I saw her again, completely by chance, this time at the campus cafe. The barista called out, "Maya?" and handed her a latte. That's how I learned her name. She sat by the window, sketchbook open, pen moving fast. Same yellow hoodie, same paint-stained fingers. I didn't say anything, I just watched. And that was enough to pull me in deeper. Once you cross one line, the next doesn't feel as bad. The following week, I went to the gym near that cafe. I didn't have a membership. I pretended to look at the bulletin board in the lobby. She came in, signed her name at the desk. The attendant teased her for always forgetting her log. She laughed and said, "I've got 100 thoughts and only 2 hands." I laughed too loud. She glanced at me for half a second, then turned back to the desk. That was all. But I convinced myself it meant something. After that, I started noticing details I had no business noticing. She ran on the treadmill most evenings, around 6. She had a roommate. Sometimes a guy in a green jacket came over and left before midnight. I told myself I wasn't hurting anyone by just observing, but I was weaving myself into her life in my head. One night I parked by the trail behind Oakhurst. A maintenance worker spotted me sitting in my car and asked if I was waiting for someone. When I said no, he told me not to wait there. I left, heart pounding. But 2 nights later, I came back anyway. That's when the police first contacted me. They said they got on a report about a dark sedan lingering near the complex. They weren't accusing me of anything, they just asked me to stop. I promised I would, and for a little while, I meant it. Then I found the note, stuck under my windshield wiper in my own apartment parking lot. It was a photo of me at the gas station that first night. The angle wasn't from a security camera, it was taken by someone standing nearby. At the bottom, written in thick black marker, "I remember you too." I don't know if it was her, or her boyfriend, or maybe the maintenance worker, but it terrified me. I thought I could fix things. I wrote a letter. "I'm sorry I made you uncomfortable. It won't happen again." My plan was to slip it under a door. Instead, walking into the complex triggered the cameras. Management saw me, and they called the cops. The next day I was served with the restraining order. No calls, no following, no showing up at her home, work or school. Violation would be a crime. I signed it, told myself it was finally over. But obsession doesn't care what you sign. 2 weeks later I drove past again, parked 2 blocks away, walked towards her building, told myself I just wanted to make sure she was safe. That's how twisted it had gotten, that I believed my presence meant protection. She saw me, came outside with her phone already up, recording, calling. She said my name, my real name. My legs froze. Then I mustered up the courage to run. The police arrested me the next morning. In court, they laid out everything. Screenshots, camera footage, my letter, every bad decision I justified in my head. Produced a plain evidence on paper. I pled guilty, misdemeanor stalking, violation of protective order. Now I'm on probation, fines, counselling. And here's the truth, I'm not unique. In counselling I met a dozen of other men who told themselves the same story I did, that it was fate, that it was concern, that it was kindness. But it wasn't any of those things. It was stalking. I haven't seen her since court. Maya isn't her real name. If she ever hears this, I'm sorry. She doesn't owe me forgiveness. She doesn't owe me anything. There's no ghost in this story. No mass figure in the darkness. The horror is how ordinary it was. A glance at a gas station, a right turn you shouldn't take, a memory you decide means more than it does, and all the little excuses you tell yourself until you become someone who you don't even recognise. I still have that receipt. October 17th, 10:43 p.m, a yellow hoodie, a whale keychain, 5 seconds of kindness, and then the worst parts of me did the rest. don't really tell people about this. Not because I think they'll think I'm crazy, but because I still don't know if what happened was real or not. And the scariest part is, I'm not sure which would be worse. This happened over the course of maybe 2 months, 2.5. I wasn't writing it down at the time, so the timeline's a little fuzzy now. But it started right after I moved into this ground floor flat. Just 1 bedroom, nothing weird about it, no creepy basement, no local legends or anything like that. At the time, I was working weird shifts, so I'd sleep during the day sometimes, and that's when the first one happened. What I assumed was sleep paralysis. I was lying on my side, sort of dozing, not really asleep, but not fully awake either, and suddenly I couldn't move, not at all. My eyes were open, but everything else was just frozen. And I saw something. It was in the corner, near the bedroom door, this figure standing completely still, tall. Not huge or anything, but definitely tall. The head was too low, like it didn't have a neck, it just sloped from the shoulders. I couldn't see a face, just this sort of tilted outline, like someone trying to look human, but not getting it quite right. The weirdest part, I didn't feel scared at first, just confused. It was like my brain had caught up to what I was seeing. Then it took a step forward. It didn't walk like a person. Its foot hit the floor in this exaggerated slow motion, like it didn't understand how to move its weight. I heard the floorboard creak, actually heard it. And that broke the spell or whatever it was, because I suddenly gasped and I could move again. The figure was gone. I wrote it off as a dream. Probably my brain thought I heard a sound, right? And that's how it tricks you. Just a textbook hallucination or whatever. But then it happened again. Different day, but same thing. Woke up, couldn't move. But this time I was on my back and the figure was standing next to the bed, like right at the edge, way too close. I couldn't even breathe properly. I remember my heart hammering so hard it felt like my ribs were vibrating. The figure bent towards me, no face, just a shape. Black, featureless, almost like static. But I knew it was looking at me. I could feel it looking. Then it leaned in. And right by my ear, it whispered something. I swear to you, I still don't know what it said. It wasn't a word, not in English anyway, just this breathy, garbled sound like it was trying to speak through something. Then, again, I snapped awake, could move, room was empty. I sat up, sweating, dizzy. But here's where it shifted from maybe dream to maybe not. The pillow next to my head was warm, like something had been leaning on it. That messed with me. I even told myself, you probably rolled onto it earlier and didn't notice. But the indent, it was fresh. I pressed my hand into it and it slowly rose back up. I started sleeping with the light on after that, and with something on in the background, a fan, a podcast, whatever. It helped for a bit, but the dreams got worse. I started seeing more than just one figure. I don't even know if they were the same thing. Some were tall. One night, I saw something small, crouched in the corner. It didn't move, just sat there with its arms around its knees, staring at me. Once I saw a hand reach out from under the bed and drag itself back under, like something had been halfway out, watching me, then realized I saw it and slid away. Every single time I couldn't move, I couldn't scream, just frozen, watching. And here's the thing, I started hearing the noises outside the dreams, floor creaks, clicks on the window glass, like fingernails, always at night, always between 2:30 and 3:30 a.m. I told myself I was dreaming, even when I wasn't paralyzed, just lying there with my eyes closed. I'd see flickers, like someone standing in the doorway when I knew no one should be. There's one night I keep thinking about, because it's the night that messed me up more than any of them. I had one of the episodes, sleep paralysis, whatever they call it, but this time the figure wasn't near the bed. It was outside the window, just standing there. I live on the ground floor, but there's a bush right under that window, so no one could easily stand there. It would crunch under their weight. It's spiky too, thorns. I've cut myself trimming it. But the figure was just there, standing behind the glass, face right against it. I couldn't see eyes, but I knew it was staring in. Its head tilted once, then again, too fast, like a glitch. And then it smiled. I've never seen something so wide. No lips, no muscles, just a change in shape, like the bottom of the face extended. All teeth, way too many. I blinked, and it was suddenly inside, just standing over me, breathing heavy, not moving. Then I woke up, sat there completely still, trying to slow my breathing, heart pounding. I told myself it was a dream. I had to believe that, until I looked at the window. There was a smudge on the glass. Not a full print, just a blurry mark, like someone had pressed their face or hand there. Not huge, but high up. Higher than I could easily reach from outside, and in the middle of the bush. It was gone by morning. I wiped it off. Since then, it's mostly stopped. No more paralysis, no more whispering, but I still don't sleep on my back. Ever. And every once in a while, when I'm drifting off, I'll get this flicker of movement at the edge of my vision. A shape in the corner, or near the window. I always tell myself it's nothing, just a dream. But I can't stop thinking about that one night, that bush, that window, and how the mark was on the outside. I want to tell you about something that happened to me when I was 14. My family used to take this coastal trip every summer. Same place, same little rental house, same routine. It wasn't flashy or anything, just a quiet spot near the sea, cliffs, dunes, fields. There was a kind of comfort in that predictability. I went with my parents and my two younger brothers, Alex, who was 11, and Ben, who was 9 at the time. Now, there was this place we'd always go to play. A short walk from the cottage, past a line of crooked trees and down this narrow, overgrown path, was a small, run-down building. It looked like it used to be some kind of maintenance shed or maybe a part of an old farm. Just a single structure, roof half caved in, windows broken, and walls covered in ivy. The yard around it was patchy with weeds and thistles, but to us it was perfect. It was our secret playground. Every summer we'd go there in the late afternoon or sometimes even after dinner when the sun was low and everything was golden. We played tag, made up games, and our favourite, hide and seek in the dark. It was the kind of place where it felt like time didn't touch anything. No one ever came by. We never saw another soul out there. Until that night. It started off like every other time. It was the second or third night into our trip that year, and we begged our parents to let us go out for one last game before dark. They were having wine on the patio and waved us off, told us to be back before it got too late. The sun was already dipping low when we reached the building. Shadows stretched across the field. The grass was dry and tall in places, swaying slightly in the breeze. The air had that thick coastal stillness to it, like everything was holding its breath. We did rock, paper, scissors to decide who would seek. Alex lost. I was hiding. Ben ran off immediately, laughing. I ducked low and made my way around the back of the building, crouching behind a cluster of bushes near a crumbling wall. From where I was, I had a clever view of Alex stepping through the tall grass, covering his eyes, counting down from 20. I couldn't see Ben, but I figured he was somewhere in the yard. There was this old wooden door that led into what used to be a storeroom or something. He liked to hide there. As I crouched, trying to slow my breathing, I heard rustling in the bushes next to me. I froze. It was close, like a couple of feet away. I remember glancing over, expecting to see Ben, but I couldn't see anything through the leaves. I whispered, "Ben!" Nothing, just more rustling, like something shifting its weight. I felt this tightness crawl up the back of my neck. The rustling stopped suddenly, like dead stop, and I looked back towards Alex. He was getting closer, calling out names like he always did. No sign of Ben. The game ended a couple minutes later. Alex had found me, then Ben, and we regrouped in the yard, laughing, talking over each other about who had the best spot. I brought up the rustling in the bushes and looked at Ben like, "Nice try." But he gave me this weird look and shook his head. "I wasn't in the bushes," he said. "I was behind the wooden door the whole time. Didn't move." I didn't really believe him at first. It just made sense that it was him, right? But he looked confused, maybe even a little scared. We argued about it for a minute before it dropped eventually. Probably a fox or a hedgehog, we figured. Or wind, something harmless. We decided to play one more round. This time, I was it. I turned to the wall, covered my eyes, and started counting. It was darker now. The sun had completely set, and everything had this dim blue-grey haze to it. I remember the wind had died down and the air felt heavier. I got to 20 and turned around. It took me a while to find anyone. The yard was quiet. I stepped carefully through the grass, past the rusted old fence, looking for any sign of movement. My footsteps were loud against the stillness. I walked past the wooden door. No one there. I looked around the side of the building, near the bushes. That's when I saw someone crouching just around the far corner of the shed, near the tree line. They were partially hidden behind the wall, but I could see their outline. It was definitely a person, someone crouched low, facing away from me. I grinned. I thought it was Alex. I walked up behind them, reached out and tapped their shoulder. "Found you!" They stood up, too fast, too smooth, and way too tall. It wasn't my brother. This person was taller than my dad, wide shoulders. I didn't see their face, just this looming silhouette. And then they made this sound, a kind of low grunt, like a mix between a cough and a growl. No words, no motion, just this deep adult sound that didn't belong anywhere near kids playing hide and seek. I didn't wait. I turned and ran, full speed, straight through the yard, past the broken fence, tearing through the thorns. I was screaming before I even realised I was screaming. One of those primal sounds that rips out of your throat before your brain even processes what's happening. I remember hearing Alex and Ben behind me shouting my name, then falling into step, chasing after me. No questions asked. When they heard that scream, they knew something was wrong. When we finally made it back to the cottage, I could barely breathe. I slammed the door shut behind us. My parents were inside, mid-conversation, but everything stopped for the moment they saw our faces. They asked what happened. I told them everything. At first they thought maybe it was a hiker or a local playing a prank, but as I described the man in the shadows, something changed in their expressions. My mum went quiet. My dad asked us again and again if we're absolutely sure we didn't recognise him, or if we saw where he went. We didn't. He didn't run, he didn't chase, he just stood up. That night we weren't allowed to go outside, and the next morning, before we even finished breakfast, my parents packed our bags, told us the weather was changing, or that they'd made a mistake with the booking, something like that. We never went back. Ever. They never said it directly, but I think they believed us. I think something about the way I screamed or the way we described what we saw, or maybe it was something else. Maybe they knew something about that place. Years later, I tried to find the building on Google Maps. I could still picture the path, the field, the trees, but no matter how many times I scrolled, I couldn't find it. Either it was torn down, or it was never marked to begin with. We played hide and seek there every summer, and that night, someone else was playing too. I lived next door to him for almost 7 years. We shared a wall, and for most of that time, I didn't know who he really was. I'm not telling this story because I want attention or sympathy. I'm telling it because I think people need to understand that monsters don't always hide in shadows. Sometimes, they mow their lawns on Sunday mornings. Sometimes, they wave at your kids. Sometimes, they ask you to sign for their packages while they're at work. Sometimes, they live next door. When I moved into the duplex, I was 28, just out of a rough breakup, looking for something quiet, cheap, and temporary. The place was old, a little run down, but it had charm. Brick walls, old wooden floors that creaked, a fireplace that didn't work but made the living room feel cozy, and rent was dirt cheap. My neighbour, he introduced himself as Dan, seemed fine, polite, quiet, a little stiff maybe, but unremarkable in every way. Early 40s, short, buzzed hair, wire-frame glasses, always wearing slacks, even on weekends. You'd forget his face the second you looked away. The landlord said he lived there for a long time and paid his rent early every month. Never had any complaints. In hindsight, that should have been the first red flag. We didn't talk much, some light conversation in the driveway, weather, trash day, small stuff. Once or twice he brought over mail that accidentally ended up in his box. That was about it. But there were little things I didn't think about much at the time, but now keep me up at night. Like how he never had visitors, not once, or how I'd sometimes see his car leave at 2, 3 in the morning, no headlights, just quietly rolling out of the driveway like he didn't want anyone to notice. Or how once I saw him carrying something wrapped in tarp out to his trunk, heavy. Took him a while. He said it was old plumbing from the kitchen. I remember that because he smiled when he said it. It was the only time I ever saw him smile. For years I chalked it up to him just being private, reclusive, weird, but harmless. Then 3 things happened, all within the span of one summer, that changed everything. Late June, I started noticing a sour, metallic odour drifting in through the shared vent in the bathroom. At first I thought it was dead rodents. This place had a few from time to time. But it didn't go away. If anything, it got stronger, sickly sweet, like rotting meat and bleach. I reported it to the landlord. He said he'd talked to Dan. But a few days later, Dan caught me in the driveway. He was polite but firm, told me the smell was from a dead possum in his attic and that he was handling it. But his eyes, they didn't match the calm tone of his voice. They looked excited. The second thing was the woman. I came home from work one night around 8:30 and saw someone standing on his porch. Young woman, maybe late 20s. She looked panicked, pale, barefoot, holding her arms like she was freezing. She saw my headlights and started walking toward me, fast, but before she got to my car, Dan stepped out of the shadows. I hadn't even seen him there. He grabbed her by the arm and said something I couldn't hear. She froze. Then slowly, almost mechanically, she turned around and walked back inside with him. I sat in my car for a solid 5 minutes trying to make sense of it. Eventually I convinced myself they were a couple having a fight, or maybe she was drunk or high. I didn't call the cops. That decision will haunt me forever. The third thing was the box. Mid-July, I came home to find a small cardboard box on my doorstep. No label, no note, just my name written in thick black marker. I opened it inside. Inside were photographs. Printed, physical photographs. Dozens of them. All of me. Some from the front yard. Some through my windows. One of me inside my living room. One of me inside my bedroom. Always taken from odd angles, low to the ground, through blinds, half obscured by bushes. And on the back of every photo was a date. Some from months ago, some from years, some just a week old. I threw up, and then I called the police. They searched his place that night, knocked, waited, no answer, broke the door down. What they found made national news, though the details were never all made public. I only know what I saw and what they told me later. The whole place was staged like a normal apartment, living room, kitchen, bedroom, but every closet was locked from the outside, and downstairs, beneath the floorboards in the basement, was a crawl space, roughly 6 feet wide, maybe 3 feet tall. He dug it out by hand, I think, over years. Inside were locks of hair, fingernails, teeth, and names, dates, Polaroids, dozens of women. One of them was a girl I saw that night on his porch. Some of the photos were too old to be recent. Some of the women have still never been identified. Dan, if that was ever his real name, disappeared. Gone without a trace. They found his car abandoned in a parking garage across the state line, wiped clean. No prints, no blood, no body. He was just gone. For weeks after, I couldn't sleep. Every creak in the floor, every rattle in the vents. I thought he'd come back. I thought maybe he'd left something behind in my walls. I moved, left everything behind. I still don't live in one place for too long. I check the locks every night, twice, sometimes 3 times. Because the truth is, the scariest part wasn't what he did, it was that I didn't know. For 7 years, I lived next to something inhuman, and I had no idea. I shook his hand, I borrowed his lawnmower, I laughed at his dumb weather jokes, and if he hadn't made one mistake, one box, one slip, I might have lived next to him forever, or died next to him, whichever came first. So the next time someone tells you their neighbour gives them a bad feeling, believe them, because monsters don't always wear masks. Sometimes they live next door. I watched a live stream that ended in murder. I've never talked about this before, not to friends, not to family, not even in an anonymous forum, because I don't know what I saw, or what the right thing to do about it ever was, but I know one thing, I watched a live stream that ended in murder. It happened late at night, about a year ago. I couldn't sleep, so I ended up scrolling through a smaller streaming site I'd found a few weeks before. It wasn't mainstream, more like a dumping ground for anyone who wanted to broadcast without rules or oversight. Some people played music, others showed themselves gaming, some just sat and talked. That night, a stream caught my eye. It had only 3 viewers, no thumbnail, no username I recognised, just a title, Room. I don't know why I clicked, curiosity, boredom, but I did. The stream opened to a camera pointed at a small, dimly lit bedroom. The walls were bare, the furniture sparse, just a bed pushed against the wall, a dresser cluttered with bottles and trash, and a single buzzing bulb overhead casting everything in a sickly yellow glow. The camera was set up in the corner, angled perfectly to catch everything. It didn't look like a set. It looked lived in, but in a way that felt temporary, careless, and then after maybe 30 seconds of silence, a man stepped into the frame. He looked ordinary, early 30s, thin, stringy dark hair, plain t-shirt and jeans, but something about his face made me immediately uneasy. His eyes were too wide, and when he looked into the camera it felt like he was staring straight through me. He stood there for a long time before finally speaking. "Thanks for watching," he said. It wasn't cheerful, it wasn't sarcastic, just flat. The chat was dead, so I typed, "Hey." Almost instantly he smiled, too wide, too forced. "Good, someone's here," he said. Then he walked out of the frame. I thought maybe it was some kind of art performance, but when he came back in, he was dragging a woman. Her hands were bound with duct tape, her mouth was taped too. She looked terrified. My stomach dropped. He sat her on the bed, sat beside her, and looked into the camera again. "She's real," he said. "Say hello." The woman tried to say hello, but it came out muffled and broken. I typed frantically, "What is this? Is this fake?" He didn't answer me directly. He just stroked the woman's hair, almost gently, and said, "People think the internet isn't real, but everything you see here is happening right now. You're part of it." And then pulled out a knife, a small serrated one, nothing flashy. I typed again, "Please stop. Please don't." He tilted his head at the screen, read it, and smiled again. "This one cares," he said, and then without hesitation, he cut her throat. The sound, I'll never forget it. The muffled scream, the wet tearing noise, her body convulsing and then just going limp. I wanted to close the stream, but I couldn't move. My hands were numb. He laid her down gently, almost tenderly, and then turned back to the camera and said quietly, "Now it's real." And the stream cut off. I sat staring at the blank screen for what felt like hours. My brain scrambled to rationalize. Maybe it was special effects, a film project, a hoax, but deep down I knew I had just watched someone die. I refreshed the page. The channel was gone. Not offline. Deleted. No history, no username to click, no archive, like it had never existed. I checked the site's forums for days afterwards, hoping someone else would mention it. No one did. No thread, no rumour, nothing. Even the 2 other viewers who'd been in the chat. Gone, no trace. I thought about going to the police, but what would I even say? I saw a murder on a live stream, but I don't have a recording, don't know where it happened, don't know who the people were. They'd laugh me out of the station. So I stayed quiet, and for months I lived with this pit in my stomach, waiting to see a news story, a missing person report, anything that would confirm it was real. Something I could point to and say, yes, that's her, I wasn't crazy. But nothing ever came, and that's what haunts me the most. Not the image of her eyes, not the sound she made when the knife touched her throat, not even the smile on his face. What haunts me is the silence. The fact that a woman might have been murdered live on camera, and I might be the only person left who knows. No body reported, no name, no record, just a man, a room, and a live stream that vanished the second it ended. And me, still wondering if what I saw was real, or if somewhere, right now, it's happening again.